Hey, sup crew. How we doing? Good to see you bright and early. Morning. The only challenging thing is trying to fit all the information onto 8 pages for the assessment. Yeah. Every year I set it, and I'm like, you've got this page limit, and people are like, how am I going to fill that many pages? No, that's not going to be your problem. Your problem's going to be how do I fit it? You've got 9 pages as well, remember? The title page doesn't count, and your references can spill over onto a 10th page. So you've got that extra page. There was a typo in the original instructions that made that misleading, but you've got 9 full pages. I love it. What's Smash Mouth? Yeah, you've done a lot in the last 3 weeks. It is actually surprising that in just 3 weeks, when you turn around and look at it, how much you've actually covered. Doesn't always feel like it, but it's a lot. Yeah, 4 pages of intro may be too much. It's probably a good place to hack and slash. You generally write intros, your first draft of them is generally kind of long and rambly, and it's generally an easy place to cut content. But sometimes a long intro makes everything else easier. So, nice. Yeah, 140 pages down to 80. That's a that's a good task. First draft of my 3 page paper that I chucked in the lecture, I think was 25 pages long. Uh, so just making sure, are we assuming the new member joining our group has seen the lecture content and the lectures? No, 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 no. They've seen my lectures. Because they're super public, but your workshop content, they haven't seen any of that. Essentially, what you're doing is recapping your workshop content and your problem identification stages. How many pages should the research section be? That depends on how you break it up. Okay, so you might have a fairly long introduction and research section, which then allows your other sections to be quite short. Or you can kind of go the other way and have fairly short intros and sort of explain the other concepts as you go. It depends on your project, on what work you're doing, and what writing style you have. So it's really hard to answer that question. The best thing for you to do is have a crack, write it down, and then kind of go back through it and see where you need to cull content or where you can easily cull content. Photos are good. Um, Taking deliberate photos of specific things generally allows you to cut quite a lot of content. I'll go through some how to reference stuff in Word. No camera? What? Why no camera? Oh, I know why no camera. I'll be back in a second. Did that fix it? Am I back? Yes. Success. No camera was because when I recorded my lecture and it was 28 gig, I then got a hard drive and I put the lecture on my hard drive and I drove into uni and I uploaded it from uni and I needed a USB-C port, a USB 3 port, and I unplugged my camera to get to one. And I forgot to plug it back in. Sorry about that, everyone. I'll be in today. I'll just be in after the stream. We'll cover this again a little bit later, I think, but intros are as long as you need your intro to be, okay? Depending on your writing style, some people will have a 1-page intro and some will have a 8-page intro. It really is a lot of personal preference and it really depends on your project. And it depends what you define as an intro. Things like a problem statement, whether they go in an introduction or out of it, is kind of up to you. So try a few different options and see what works. Are we supposed to do most of the scoping and research individually or as a team? I'd be doing that type of stuff as a team if you can, but you're gonna have to do it individually as well. So it basically depends on what your team been doing. If you haven't been working as a team, do it individually and then bring all that individual work together and see how well it lines up. Because if you've all done this individually and gotten 4 different scopes, you need to work that stuff through as a team. Can we assume they have an assumed knowledge of Year 12 physics? That would be dangerous. Maybe that they paid some attention in Year 12 physics, but I'd still want to be recapping any of that content. Double space text demo. Yes. Yes, I can. Why does the outline say that some assessments are not returned? Because your first quiz, for example, was not returned. It was an online quiz. That wasn't getting returned. And based on all of the data I've been able to collect so far, getting something like your assignment, us writing marks on it and returning to you is probably the least efficient way of doing feedback that exists. So it would be good if we never returned any of your assessments to you and we set up assessments that required you to learn by doing, not learn by feedback. And that's what we're aiming to get towards. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So not sure if others feel the same, but I never watched the YouTube in 4K. Yeah, My reason I don't deliberately try and create 4K videos, it's because I have a 4K monitor, and if I want to get anything other than 720, I have to get 4K. I don't have an ability to capture in between at the moment. So you're either going to get really bad or really high. I don't have an in between. All right. So what I was hoping to do, my plan for today was to do a bit of Q&A at the start, as we always do, and we have been doing. I wanted to give people the opportunity to ask any not assignment-related questions. I know most of you have assignment-related questions, and I know that's why most of you are here, and that's fine. We're going to spend heaps of time on that. But if anybody has any questions that are not assignment-related, ask them first, and then we can kind of get them out of the way, and then we can focus on assignment stuff at the end. We're also going to do a quick live example back and forth where we talk about a bit of prototyping. So I've grabbed an example. We'll talk through it as a team together. Hopefully it'll be a bit of fun. We won't spend a huge amount of time on it. I'm thinking that's going to be maybe 15 minutes, depending on how much you guys engage. And then we'll go into communication. So some of this is going to be me doing a few demos. I'm going to demo how to do some referencing because I've been asked that question a few times, and demo how to do some double space text, and demo any other things that you specifically want to be shown in Word, so that you can see it. And then we're just going to do this Q&A that we have been doing. All right, so that's my plan to run through this. So does anybody have any questions that are not assessment related? Please chuck them in the chat now, and we'll smash through all of that. Just make sure that we've got it covered. Does the uni have a 3D printer we have access to? The uni has many 3D printers, but your assessments deliberately limit you in your set of tools you have access to, and you would need to purchase any tool outside of that. So if within your budget you wish to purchase a 3D printer, go for it. But you would need to do that if you wanted to use a 3D printed part. Inversely, you can go, there are quite a few websites that exist where you send them a model, pay them a fee, and they send you back a part. That would also be considered an acceptable solution. The argument around not giving you a 3D printer or just because you have one at home is your client doesn't necessarily have access to one. So the fact that you can borrow one from a uni doesn't really scale to your client's level. So you can use them for prototyping. If you want to use them for prototyping, that's fine. It's 100% encouraged. That's what 3D printers are actually good for, but you can't use them in your final design. Unless you budget for it and pay for it. Then it's perfectly fine. I'm confused about models and assumptions in relation to the Enviro project. Are they not mathematical, but just ecological models? I mean, there's both. Have a chat to Juan about it. I'm happy to spend a couple of minutes in your workshop this week as well. As you get to things like biology, you start to fall away from having these really clear-cut, clean mathematical models, but there are still mathematical models for things. There are mathematical models which describe the nitrogen cycle, for example. Do you know when the assessments tab in Blackboard will be up? Still can't see the assessments tab on the timeline. So the assessments tab in Blackboard and the timeline are two totally separate things. And the timeline, as far as I'm aware, is totally broken. But the Blackboard tab is different. So if we're in Blackboard, this thing is apparently broken for all of you. I still don't know why, because it still works perfectly fine for me, but apparently it's broken for you. But the assessments tab is over here, and will get your assessments appearing in it. Okay? So this, as far as I'm aware, works perfectly fine, because otherwise people couldn't have done their quiz. So the assessments tab, I think, is fine. It's just the banner, and the banners are pretty useless anyway. It's not like they give you any real useful information. So hopefully, if you don't have an assessments tab, please let me know that immediately, because that's a big deal. Mathematical models for the medical project, Abby, you're in a similar boat as the Enviros, that a lot of what you do doesn't have the really hard mathematical models around it. But you will see things like a really good one in the medical project is the difference between a digital and an analog signal. That's a huge, big modeling step where you take a continuous signal in the real world and you make it digital by breaking it up into steps. That's a mathematical modeling step that you do there. All right, awesome. Great news, Sophie, that's there. Yeah, the banners are broken. The banners are pretty useless, even if they do work, so don't worry about them. Just listen to lectures. That's where you want to get your content from, not the banner. All right, I'm going to jump into a little bit of housekeeping. As I go through this, if you have more course-related questions, please chuck them in. Um, so, first up, the next couple of weeks are going to get a little bit messy in terms of admin and housekeeping. So, there's a couple of assessments that are coming up, and we're starting to change the way in which we do your workshops. So your workshops is going to stop being so prescribed. They're going to stop being you walk in and you get an hour of lecture content, and they're going to start to sort of open up and become more student driven. We're also going to then move into a process where each week you will get 10 minutes with your client, and that may be your actual client some weeks, but it'll more likely just be your workshop leader. And you'll have to report back to them what have you done each week and what you plan to do next week. And that process is going to make up an assessment task. Now, we're going to teach you how to do that, but that's going to start in between weeks 5 and week 6. Okay, and we're going to get the ball rolling before the break. So you'll get some content about how to do that. You're also going to have a quiz come up in week 7, which will be after the break. So it's like a month away, but I have to, according to university rules, tell you about it 2 weeks before it's due, which means I've got to tell you about that in week 5 as well. So you're going to hear all of this stuff about assessments. Don't stress about them. I'm going to go through them like I did with the last one. I'll talk about it in the lecture, and then you'll get an assessment-specific video that will explain everything you need to know. So it'll be fine, but there's just going to be a lot of this that comes through in a short period of time. Doesn't mean you have to do a lot of work. It just means I've got to tell you about a lot of things in a short period of time. So in order to cull the confusion, lectures and live streams are your place to get information, okay? Awesome. So, I did say that on Sunday, and this is one of the other things that's a little bit confusing, I'm happy to run a second live stream on Sunday this week, and that will be to go through assessment questions and potentially to take a couple of reports and me to go through those reports live on stream and critique them. Go, this is bad, this could have been done better, this is wrong, this shouldn't have been done like this. And then that hopefully provides you far better feedback than you getting that as a marked up version after you've submitted your report. This will allow you to basically make these changes before it's due. So in order to do this, I'm going to need some of your reports. I will ask you to email me your reports on Friday, preferably on Friday this week coming, maybe Saturday morning. It depends when I get to them. I'm then going to have to go through any of those and pick the ones that I want to use on stream and cull them and all sorts of jazz. So I need a bit of time to prep. So yeah, if you've got a report that you're happy you think is pretty much finished, and I only want reports that they don't have to be 100% polished, but I need something to work with, right? You can email me that on Friday. Now, if you do so, be aware it's going up on stream for everybody to see. I'll do my best, like, to keep it anonymous, right? I won't say, oh, this is John's and this is his crappy report, let's rip into him. But it will go, your words will go up on stream. So only send it to me if you're happy for that to happen, and know that my goal here is to find as many things wrong with it as possible as a teaching tool. So I'm going to be critical of it, overly critical of it. So just be prepared for that if you're willing to share it with me. I don't want somebody to share something and then think later, oh no, Dylan was a bit meaner to me than I thought. I'm going to put it out there. I don't know if I will record the Sunday live stream because that's a different set of permissions about using somebody's work in something that will be recorded versus something that will not. At this stage, my plan is for it to be solely a live stream. I will consider recording it, but I'm not sure. So my question for you is, when should I do it? I'm happy to do it anytime Sunday before about 4 o'clock because it's going to start to get pretty useless. When do people prefer? My preference would have been 10 to 12. That's what I was thinking. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 12, that type of time, that allows it to be, you'll still have enough time after that to go, oh, okay, Dylan said these things. I need to go back to my report and change things and stuff like that. Cool. All right. Well, that sounds pretty good then. I will do that. All right. So email me some reports, and I will jump on. I'll probably try and jump on a little bit before 10 so I can do some Q&A, and I'll go through reports 10 to 12 then. Amazing. Alrighty then. Cool. Well, let's say 9:30 to 12:30ish. Okay, so other than that, the thing that's happening this week is your competencies, and just a few things for you to try to remember as you do your competencies. There's a few learning objectives to your competencies, but one of them is you need to talk about them in your report. So it's a good idea to remember what data do you want to collect during your competency for your report. Generally, this is photos. That's by far the most common one that people forget to do, is take any photos and then they try to write about it, and they don't have the data that they need. So figure out what data you want to collect, whether it is photos or observations, or you actually want to get in and measure something, I don't know, but think about what that's going to be before so that you can be ready to collect it during your competency. The other thing for me to point out around your competencies is time management is very important with them. So they are meant to be competencies that are difficult sometimes to do within the time, or they have particular timelines on them that are hard to meet. And I want you to experience having to work in tight timelines every now and then. And that might be as simple as you got to be ready when you walk in the door. Abby, you do not need to prepare for your competency. You will get it in Enviro will get it this week in their workshop. You have no prep to do for yours. It's fine. But yeah, sometimes it's as simple as being ready as soon as you walk in the door to do your competency. Sometimes it's, oh, the time they've given us is actually really tight and we need to prioritize what we do, or we needed to prep, or whatever. But if you're sitting there freaking out around timing, that was deliberate. We wanted you to experience tight timelines because on test day, you're going to experience tight timelines and you've got to be prepped for that, basically. And overall, remember with the competencies, the objective of you is not to necessarily do well in them, it's to learn a lot from them. So most of your competencies are mini versions of test day, and what I want you to do is come into this and go, oh wow, I really didn't prepare for this well. I'll remember that and I won't make that mistake in 8 weeks when it comes to actual test day. Okay, so they're meant to be learning opportunities. They're not meant to be things that we necessarily all pass. There are no marks for passing your competency. It doesn't work that way. There are only marks for learning things from your competency. Okay, that's their objective. All right, I'll just check if there's anything in this chat that I need to answer, and then we'll jump into a quick back and forthy prototype example, which should be a whole heap of fun. How big should photos be? We can look at that in the next section. Do we do this in our lab this week? Yes, your competencies will happen in your labs this week. Can we allot a page just for jargon? You could, and that's definitely a thing that happens in longer reports. You have a page like at the start, and it's a series of definitions. If you opt to use a page on that, you can. Also, ask again in the next section. I keep getting distracted. I'm sorry. Okay. So what I'm getting from this is nobody has any questions about the course at this stage. Models and assumptions for civil engineering. You've seen quite a lot of models and assumptions for civil engineering. Everything you do in Strand is a model. Your whole, what is a pin joint, what is a truss, all of those are models. All of the stuff that you've seen about supports and connections, that's all models and assumptions. Referencing, da 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 da. Is this session recorded? Yeah, these sessions are recorded. If everybody's good, you can see a rabbit at the end. After we get through this, and then we get through the communication stuff, and we're in general Q&A, I'll go and get Grace. All right. Okay, let's go. Prototyping stuff. So remember from the back end of the lecture, we talked about some prototyping. We talked about we've got a big project, we want to break it down into parts, and we want to prototype some parts. So as is our fun example, let's look at our trebuchet. So let's assume that our task that we've been given, that was going to be the mechanical engineering project a couple of years ago until I realized it was far too dangerous, was going to be build me a trebuchet. So if we remember back from whenever it was that we first looked at these in week 2, that our trebuchet is our old school siege engine catapulty thing that launches rocks really far. Tell me, what would you want to prototype? How do you break this problem down from the enormous task that it is into separable, measurable parts that we could prototype? What would you want to prototype and why? And how? Give me something. How could you break this down? Okay, so you're talking about the base being strong enough, different joint types, the latch for releasing the arm bits. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm with you. Release mechanisms, max weight on top could hold the arm, different weights, counterweights, release mechanisms. All right, so to pick a few of these out, some really good ones, and one that I didn't actually put down in my quick list when I thought about was the release mechanism. So this is held in some locked up state, right, with a huge amount of load on it, and we're guessing there's some pin somewhere that you pull out and it allows this thing to fall. How much force is on that pin, and can you pull it out when everything is fully loaded? That's a great thing to be able to test, because once you load everything up, that could be really hard to get out. We've got a few in here that are around strength, which is good. The arm, how strong it is, different types of joints, how strong they are, the base to make sure it's strong enough. This is all good. Could you test these things easily and independently, such as the base? Is there a way? Like, I could build just the base by itself, but how would I test that? Is that a thing that I can test? I understand why you would want to, but is it possible? The projectile release mechanism. So this is another one. This is a good one that you would want to know about. But how do you test that without building an entire trebuchet? Is it possible to test that as a unit, right? So what I'm asking you about here are unit tests, yeah? What we're trying to do is go, can we test these bits independently without building the entire thing at once? Can you test the base without building the entire thing? How would you load it up? Can you test the release mechanism without building the entire thing? Or is this something that we can only test once we assemble several parts together? Do modeling to simulate what the forces would be like on the base? Yeah, definitely. In this day and age, we can start to do models here, right? So in this day and age, we have the capability of making a numerical model or a computer model, and now we can simulate those things. So that's something that, with a low understanding of models and assumptions, you never had a hope of being able to do. But nowadays, yeah, you could definitely do that. And interestingly, if you look at any of the really good ones, they're actually not on rigid bases. They put them on wheels and they rock back and forwards. Okay, so this is cool. You could have it be slammed with a ram or something to simulate damage it would take in battle. So what you're basically talking about here is in-service stuff. You're looking for an unknown unknown there, right? The thing that nobody has thought about is it doesn't matter if it's necessarily good when it's pristine and its original case. How's it going to look after being out in a battlefield for 3 months? That's a great thing to consider. Transport of the trebuchet. Okay, that's excellent. We'll talk about this later, but the Warwolf trebuchet was transported in 37 wagons. Can your thing be broken down and reassembled? It took 3 months to build. Awesome. So, what can we test independently? I think we got a bunch of these. Rotation mechanism. I think you guys got that. Arm strength, sling strength. You were all over that. Projectile aerodynamics. I did see somebody did talk about the projectile at one stage. But is that a thing that you could test? What is the correct shape, size, type of projectile that you would want to be firing? And what our maximum counterweight is. And I'm pretty sure we got that as well. So this was good. This was everything I had plus a whole bunch more. Yeah, somebody had velocity of projectile in here. That's awesome. So this was good. But we did notice that a few of these things, whilst they were parts that we would want to prototype, we didn't necessarily have the mechanisms to do so. And for some of these things, we needed to do integration testing. There's no realistic way of us knowing some of these parameters without actually putting several of them together and then testing them all together. So one of the interesting things about building a small scale model is in something like a trebuchet, it does not scale linearly. So if you make one that's half the size, the members don't need to be half as big. Often they need to be a quarter as big or an eighth as big. It's called the square cubed law, and it basically means scale models are pretty much totally useless for actual application of trebuchets because critical points change as a function of scale. And it's a really, really interesting problem. It essentially, yeah, it's called the square cubed law. Go and look it up. But it's based on the fact that something like a mass scales with the cube of a characteristic dimension because it scales with the volume, but a strength often scales with the square of a characteristic dimension. So eventually you'll get to the point where your counterweight crushes the supports that it's on as a function of scale. Yeah, so we do unit testing first on whatever we could, which was strength of arm, release mechanism, all that kind of stuff. That was awesome. And then we can jump into integration testing, where we start going, all right, what bits of this do we need to put together in order to do a test? So once you start assembling it, you can start doing other types of tests. And we've largely talked about a whole bunch of these already. Launch angle is one of the ones that's pretty much impossible to test until you've got an assembled trebuchet. All right, there's no real way that you can test how any of this will behave until you can put all of the bits together. Again, you could simulate this. In this day and age, you can simulate a trebuchet. It's possible. People have certainly done it. It's very complicating. But it is definitely something that needs to be an integration test, not a unit test. Okay? As are a few of the other things, like you could argue your release mechanism needs to be an integration test as well. You could probably do some unit testing on it, but you wouldn't really feel confident in it until you actually got everything assembled, right? In-service loads and structural supports, I think we covered all of that pretty exhaustively. As a slight aside to this, this is a good example with trebuchets because it is a thing that we can very clearly break down and put into a whole bunch of unit tests and then integration tests. This was a lot harder to do with cannons, and a lot of them just exploded on the battlefield because they didn't really have any way of breaking the problem down with the cannons. They would just make the entire thing, because they were generally big castings, and away you go, and you just sort of hope that they would work, and a lot of them didn't. So it was a fairly unreliable thing. All right. So design validation is the other reason why we try to prototype. So we did some of the prototyping when we were talking about breaking it up. That was for design, right? That was so we could design an arm or a whatever that was strong enough to take the load. The other side of the coin for prototyping, and this is where we would often do smaller scale things, is, and this is stuff that a few of you are already talking about, which is awesome, we look at our function, our feel, and our look. So function, does it work? What is the overall objective of the trebuchet? What's it supposed to do? Fire a projectile, use a rock to break a wall. Okay. So what's the important characteristic here to destroy enemy buildings? Yes, it was there to knock down walls, and we're going to do it by firing a projectile. What's it need to do? And to help guide this, I understand that's a very open question. What do I want to do I want to throw something light really fast? Do I want to throw something with maximum kinetic energy? Do I want to throw something heavy really slow? What am I looking for here? Heavy items, long distances, yeah. So you want the best of both worlds. You want heavy and fast. But if I had to trade, do I want heavier, faster? Is there a thing I'm trying to maximize here? Or am I trying to find the best of two worlds? Or... Hey, there we go. Nice, Joe. A lot of momentum. Momentum is the key. So energy is half mv squared. The amount of kinetic energy in an object is a half mv squared, and it's actually not necessarily the most important parameter. It's a very important parameter when it comes to analyzing collisions, but generally more important, the momentum, the mass times the velocity, is more important. And that, you can tell, obviously changes what the optimum projectile weight and thus velocity becomes. So that's good. If you want to, knock down a wall, you're generally looking for maximum momentum, not maximum kinetic energy. Although those two things generally go hand in hand. So this can help us dictate what type of ammo we fire, as in how big and how dense it should be. And then hopefully we can do this with a fairly simple model, we know what mass we put in the counterweight of our trebuchet, and we knew how far it falls, so we should be able to work out the kinetic energy that we can put into the object. Cool. High momentum, relative accuracy. Yeah, that's good. That's perfect. So that's function. And what we were talking about before when we were talking about our prototyping was basically creating a trebuchet that had maximum function. Okay, it was all about the engineering side of it. It was the nuts, the bolts, the pins, the whatevers to make a device that launches something with maximum energy. Great. That's what most engineers will focus on. But the other reasons why we do design validation is one of them is feel. And what do I mean by feel? It's how, for example, how does it feel to use it? So if you remember your old meme that a trebuchet can throw a 90 kilo projectile 300 yards or whatever it used to be, how does that feel to use? How does a person load a 90 kilo projectile? Is that a usable thing? Or would your trebuchet be able to fire much faster if it fired objects that a human being could pick up and load? Or do you now need some really convoluted system to load your device? And have you thus reduced your fire rate and thus reduced the effectiveness of your device because you never considered the people using it? I don't know. Again, the Warwolf took 3 months to assemble. Whilst it technically was the biggest and most powerful trebuchet ever made, people could just casually walk away from that depending on where you tried to deploy it. They didn't, but you know. How do you determine range is another one. So how do you figure out? A few people have mentioned this about accuracy, about how far you can throw an object. But when you can't walk up to a castle wall to measure how far away from it you are, how do you do that? Is it a useful thing to be able to just throw it as far as possible, or is it easy to be able to control how far you can throw it? This is all essentially human-centered design, right? What is it like for the operator to actually use this thing, and how effectively can a human being use it? Because whilst it might be amazing, if a human being can't interact with it, it's not going to be an effective thing. And finally, look. So, is the way your trebuchet looks important? Does this matter in any way? Or is this something that, considering we're talking about siege warfare, you're just like, whatever, who cares? The other two are clearly important. Intimidation? Camouflage? Camouflage is good. It's certainly modern day. Yeah, that's really important. How well can you camouflage it? And it's not just look from an aesthetics perspective then. For intimidation, yeah. Big and scary. So the example that I keep using, the Warwolf, was a British trebuchet that they made. I think they were fighting Scotland, and it took them 3 months to build it. It was the biggest trebuchet ever made, and they set it all up. And the Scottish people walked out of their castle and said, "We surrender. We're not fighting that." They didn't even need to shoot it. They won their battle 100% through intimidation. It was that big and it was that scary that they surrendered. The King of England said no and fired at the castle anyway, which questionable move. But look was so important there that the thing served its purpose. We said the purpose of it was to knock down walls, but in reality it wasn't. The purpose of it was to win the siege. And it broke the siege without ever firing a shot. It was that big and it was that scary. That's how important look was in that case, which is amazing, right? Cool. Covered all of that. Awesome. Is there any... Yes, Longshanks versus the Scots. Braveheart times. I didn't know that corresponded with Braveheart. But yeah, awesome. So look, that was just meant to be a quick example where I wanted to, do a bit of back and forth with you, a bit of engagement around a bit of prototyping, and hopefully you can take that type of logic and apply it not just to your ENGG1500 projects, but to projects that you do in the future. So after this, what we have is some communication stuff that I want to go through. Unless anybody has any questions around the rest of this, is this something that people want to keep talking about? Otherwise, I'm happy to jump into the communication stuff and go through some of that. All right. So let's jump into some communication stuff. So some things that I've been asked a bunch of questions on. Now, I assembled some of these from emails. I assembled some of them from the Discord and some different places. So I'm going to hope that this is useful to you. I think the referencing thing is going to be a demo here. So I was asked a couple of times what style we need to reference in. It's in the video. It's IEEE. You need to use IEEE. And we've talked about what we want to reference. Workshops, external resources, lecture material. I'm just trying to... All right, cool. So let's open up a Word doc. So whatever you have, you've been writing some stuff up, and we want to put in some references. So how do we do that? It's super easy. Go references, and it'll bring up this references tab. Pick your style. Again, we're using IEEE. And then you can go insert citation, add a new source. Pick what type of source it is. So is it a journal article like a paper? Is it a book? There should be website somewhere in here, but there may not be. A different document from website or website. There we go. Or, as I've asked you to do your workshop notes, a report. I'm just gonna cancel. Hold on. I just want to pull that aside. There we go. So I can see the text chat. Awesome. So insert citation, add new source, report in this case, author. Now you can type them into here, but it's easier if you go edit, and then because it helps you with formatting. Add, and if you have multiple authors, then you just keep putting them in. You should never in this scenario put in an et al, which means and all the rest. You put in all of your authors into here. You put in your title, you put in the year, you put in who published it if you know. In our case, it would be the University of Newcastle. You spell Newcastle correctly, but whatever. And then it will put in a reference for you, okay? And basically you then just leave that reference alone. That should be correct. And as you continue to put references in, it will continue to update them. You can then get to the very end of your document, and you should be able to put in what they will call a bibliography, and it will automatically put your references in for you and format them correctly, okay? So a few things to do here is, in general, don't mess with this. Leave it the way that it is. There are some referencing styles like APA where Word gets it a little bit wrong and you sometimes have to mess with it. You don't need to mess with it in my course. Just leave it the way that Word puts it in. It's fine. I don't care. Change this from bibliography to reference list. Okay? A bibliography is the list of things that you read, whether you cited them or not. A reference list is a list of things you referenced. You want a reference list, not a bibliography. Word calls it a bibliography. Don't worry, change it to be a reference list. Okay? You do the same thing with, if you took a photo from the internet, then you reference the website from which you got it. Okay? If you take a photo from a journal article on the internet, you reference the journal article from which you got it. If you took your own photo, you don't need to reference it. If you took a photo from a friend or something, you can do what's called a personal communication, and it's basically somebody I know told me this and I trusted them. It's a very uncommonly used referencing style. I would say basically don't stress too much about it. What were the other points? So workshops, yes. External research that you found on the internet, yes, reference that. You should know how to reference that now. You just do it as a website. And my lectures. Yes, you can reference my lectures. Um, do them. You shouldn't need to be using a huge amount of lecture content because obviously the student has already seen it. But if you wanted to directly relate, hey, this is how this content directly relates to this part of this lecture, or I've stolen a photo from Dylan's lecture to use here because it was useful to me, by all means, reference the lecture then. That's fine. But do remember that they should have seen the lectures. No one's ever gotten upset because you put more references in than you needed, okay? How to put multiple authors in. So I showed you how to put multiple authors in. You generally don't, different referencing styles dictate when you're allowed to use et al. So some papers and things will have hundreds of authors and you don't want to write them all down. But depending on the referencing style, where you get to write et al. Changes. So I think for IEEE it's like 3. For APA, I think it's 8, and for some other ones, it's like 13. I don't want to read 13 author names whenever I read a paper. That seems ridiculous to me, but it's different referencing styles, and they have different rules. Okay. So just chuck them in. You should be probably fine. If you're getting more than about 3 authors, yeah, just chuck an et al at the end, and it just means and all the rest. And we won't stress too much about it in this assessment, but other people will in the future. Cool. So Harvard is the best. I despise Harvard as a referencing style, but go for it. Different people. So officially, the university teaches 9 different referencing styles. If I have a look into here, the amount of referencing styles, I don't know how to get it in Word. I know how to do it in EndNote. There's a few hundred. I think there's like 300 different referencing styles that you can pick. Yeah, there's many. Basically, I'm not a believer in memorizing a particular style because there are hundreds and hundreds of different ones. Learn how to use a system to help you reference. Do we reference all the lectures separately? And same for the workshops. Yes, if it's 4 separate lectures, it's 4 separate references. Do we just need those types? Maybe you mean these types? Probably. That should get you out of trouble. Remember your lectures and stuff and workshops, you reference them as though they are reports. That's how we're doing this. So it also does footnoting. You don't footnote in IEEE. No footnote references. That's not a thing. It is in other referencing styles. It's not in this. Okay, no footnote references. Does it automatically put them in alphabetical order? IEEE is not alphabetical. Most numbered systems, so where they put a number in, it puts them in order that they appear in the document, not in alphabetical order. Alphabetical order is only correct for some very specific referencing styles. It's wrong most of the time. Most of the time it's chronological order. Do we need a table of contents? If you want to waste a page on a table of contents in what essentially becomes an 8-page document, go for it. Don't go for it. It's totally useless in an 9-page document. Do we have to cite in the paragraph and in the reference list too? Yes. So you insert citation where you used it. So this text would be talking about whatever was in that citation, and then you cite it there. And then it appears in your reference list. Why didn't you use the built-in reference list? There's a different built-in reference list other than this one. This is just the one that I normally use. I find it easiest to teach how to use this. What if we don't use 5 references? You need to for your report. So it depends on when you use et al. Totally depends on your referencing system. Okay, so some people, again, there are hundreds of different referencing systems. So when you use it, totally changes based on where you are. What will be the title of the lectures or workshops? If they don't have a clear and obvious title, just call them by their week. Is the workshop material classes public material like the lecture material? No. Your reader has not seen any of the workshop material. Ah, that's answering a question. Awesome. Is it assumed they've seen the discipline-specific lectures? Probably not. Probably not. I wouldn't have thought they would have gone down every rabbit hole and watched every single one of the discipline-specific lectures. So I would recap anything that was in the discipline-specific stuff. It's probably worthy of a recap anyway. Yeah, so if you want to reference the discipline-specific video from the lecture, yeah, 100% reference that. And that is a separate thing to the actual lecture. There's the actual lecture, and you can reference that if you want. And then there's the discipline-specific video. You can reference that if you want. How do you bring up an already made citation? Example, just reference page 1, now want to do it on page 3 and 5. So you can go insert citation and see there it is. So as you keep adding new sources, they will continue to appear in here, and you can reuse the same reference more than once. Okay? And that makes a lot of sense. You do it all the time. If you find one really good paper or something that explains a lot of things and you refer to it 3 or 4 times in your document, then you just keep chucking it in everywhere you use it. Maybe at the end of the paragraph or something like that. How do we reference the workshops? As a report. You just chuck them in. Would you reference a lecture as? Do it as a report. So do any workshop and any lecture as a report. IEEE is a little bit about referencing lectures. It doesn't believe that it's allowed. So we just say do it as a report. Is there any specific structure of the assessment? Sorry if this is in the lecture, I haven't watched it yet. I would try and watch your lectures before here because it'll allow you to ask more pointed questions, but largely, no, there is no specific structure. That's on you to work out. But please watch the lecture because I go into it in a lot of detail. For the hard copy, do you have a preference between single or double-sided? I prefer single, personally. If we use the same workshop material a few times at different points in the report, do we reference it each time? Great question. Answered that one already. Yep, you can reuse the same reference more than once. When is this due? Sorry, it's due Monday of next week. How do you cite in paragraphs? In the same way that we did in here. So if you get to the end of the sentence, generally in which you used the content, you just bang your reference in. Any tips for modeling and assumptions for software engineering? Watch the discipline-specific video. Ask your workshop leader if you need to. How do we reference photos that aren't our own? Depends where you got them from. Okay, so if you got them from a friend, put them in as a personal communication. If you took them yourself, if you got them from the internet, reference them from the internet. How big are the photos meant to be? So that depends on what you want. Let's just grab a random photo. Of not a GIF, copy image. So when you put images in, generally you want to center them, and you want to right-click, insert caption, and you want to make sure this is Times New Roman, .12, because that's what you were asked to do. It's not italics, and it's black. Yeah. Okay. How big you make this is basically, it's something that you need to look at photo to photo. Now, it's generally a good idea to try and have a fairly standard size, that you sort of try and make all your figures roughly the same size. But you also need to look at your figure and go, what am I trying to get a user to take out of this? If I need them to see the person standing at the back there, I'm going to have to make this big because otherwise they're not going to be able to see them. But don't make them this big if you just want to go, hey, look, it has an arm on it. You can probably get away with making it that big if you want to say, hey, look, it has an arm on it, right? So it's a bit difficult without knowing exactly what image we're talking about in order to determine how big it needs to be. Sorry, well, but with referencing diagrams from websites, do I just reference it as a website? Yeah, 100%. I would just go and find the website that this thing was actually on, that I stole it from. Yeah, oh, it's the Wikipedia site. And then I would reference this website, okay? So you submit for your report. Where do we hand it in? You submit a hard copy in your workshop on time, not 5 minutes before the hour, before 5 minutes past the hour. So at the very beginning of your workshop, don't be late, submit a hard copy. As for the soft copy, assessments, and then you click on assessment 2. Oh, I'm going to edit that. I forget that you haven't seen these before. You literally click there, and it will allow you to do an submission. Okay. So you click on that button, just like you clicked on that button to do the quiz, right? You click on this button, and it will allow you to submit your assignment. I will be in workshops today from the time I get in until 9 tonight. But so do you have a workshop today? Oh. So when you do the citation, you put it in the reference list at the end of the report or each page. No, so you'll have one reference list at the very end of your report. Okay? It's the last part of your report will be your reference list. Is the title size and format totally up to us? I know the body text needs to be 12, but can we vary for titles and subtitles? Yes, great question. So if we come back to these slides of things that I needed to not forget, headings and emphasis. So can I make a heading larger than 12 point? Yeah, definitely. You can make them larger if you want to make them bigger for a heading. You can certainly come in and you can make it a bit bigger, or you could make it bold. Both of those would be fine. Probably don't go overkill. You probably don't need to go bigger and bold and underlined and all of that, but certainly you can make it a little bit bigger. And if there was a particular word that you wanted to emphasize, you could either bold it or put it in italics. That would be fine. But use it sparingly, right? It's there to create emphasis. So if you emphasize everything, you emphasize nothing. So use it sparingly, but yes, 100% you can do that. Is it valid to use jargon, explain the jargon first, and then continue to use jargon? Yeah, 100%. So part of the learning objective here, what you need to do is bring your audience member up to speed on the terminology that will be used within your team. If you never use any technical terminology, they're going to come into your first team meeting and go, I don't know what any of these words mean. So 100% it's valid. You've got to explain it. You've got to be nice and clear about that, and you probably don't want to just go, well, I explained it once, I hope you understand this forever. But yes, it's definitely valid to use technical terms within your report. The referencing is just a number. The name date system where you put an author's name in and a date is a totally different referencing system. Where do we upload the soft copy? To Blackboard. Hopefully me showing you just before helped. If not, please ask me again. Can you have two photos side by side? Yeah, you definitely can. So, if you want two photos of different trebuchets, copy. Generally what we would do is you can sort of do this in Word and you can kind of get something that's okay. And you would go, generally, left. You might format it slightly better than this. A large trebuchet, right, a small model. Okay, so you make it one figure with two parts, essentially. A better way to do this is to actually go into PowerPoint. I'm just going to open up a new blank presentation. There, and there. And you can actually put these together in PowerPoint and make them be the way you want them to be. And then you can put in we might actually change that thing's background to be white. And then you can go File, Save As, and save this as instead of as a PowerPoint presentation, you can save it as a PNG. So you can save it as a picture, okay? And when you save it as a picture, you can then put this as a single image into your Word document. And that's a much better, much cleaner way to do it. Okay, so that's by far the best way to do two pictures side by side, or six pictures all together in an arrangement. What do we write as the author if no author is listed? Write nothing. Just leave it blank. Would Wikipedia be an acceptable source? Yeah, I will count 2 of your references from Wikipedia. I was thinking same. Yeah. How to do figure captions for multiple pictures grouped together. So, for multiple pictures grouped together, make a single image in PowerPoint and then just right click and insert one caption with multiple parts. No, I'm happy for you to use. I am happy. I personally, Dylan, am happy for you to use Wikipedia. Other lecturers will not be, but I'm willing for you to do it. If that's the best place for you to get the information from, then I believe it's valid for you to send somebody back there. But I'm not going to count all of them. I want to see you reference more than just Wikipedia. You hand your hard copy in next week. Your hard copy is after the soft copy. So the due date is for everybody on the same day on the Monday afternoon. And then you just hand your hard copy in whenever your workshop is after that. Will the reference list count as part of our 9 pages? No, it will not. Awesome. Everybody's helping everybody. That's awesome chat. Should a reference list be split into 2, one for websites and lectures? No. You don't have to stress about any of that. The beauty of this type of referencing style is it doesn't split that type of stuff up, okay? You just have references and they just appear as numbers in the text and then they just appear as one long list at the end. And in a big like PhD thesis, that list might be 30 or 40 pages long, and that's fine. They're just numbered in order. It's super simple. There's nothing to stress about. Just bang your references in Word and it'll output it and just let it do its thing. Is the whole assignment directed towards a new team member? Yep. You mentioned earlier that we need to do research section. Are we able to not have it under a research section heading, but could integrate it into different sections? 100%. So which sections you actually need, you can break up however you want, okay? You can have a standalone research section. You can break that down into other things. You can have a separate introduction and scope, or you can mold those two things together. Whatever is easiest for you and your project, whatever you believe is easiest for your reader, that's what you do. You can use the snipping tool. You can use the snipping tool. So I love the snipping tool and I use it all the time. You do have to be careful with your DPI and picture quality. So if you've got an image like this and you want to take it, you can just go snip, get the snipping tool, go new, and you can grab an image and just copy that and paste it straight into Word. And that works, right? That is now one image with everything on it. That's beautiful. That's exactly what we want. And when you snip from a 4K monitor, like I am, great. If you snip from a crappy laptop monitor of a really small image, it can become incredibly pixelated really quickly. So yes, you can use the snipping tool. By all means, use it when you need to, but be aware it can affect picture quality. Yeah, you can make very professional images in PowerPoint, like really, really nice paper quality pictures. Yeah, so I cheated before, and I felt a little bit guilty about squishing this picture, which I definitely shouldn't have done. You shouldn't really ever do this to a picture, which I did before, because it's misleading, right? Generally, what you should be able to do is if you grab them from the corners, they should keep their aspect ratio. If they're not keeping their aspect ratio because they're a weird figure format, you hold shift when you grab from the corners and it will keep its aspect ratio. Does the hard copy need to include the cover sheet but the online one doesn't? Correct. You're totally correct. So the UON cover sheet is something that hard copy assignments are required for at the university. It's this global overarching university rule. Whenever you hand in a hard copy, staple a UON cover sheet to the front of it. So there's my assignment, which has got the title page and all of that jazz in it. That's what I need. That's what you upload to Blackboard. That's what you print. And then you just staple a UON cover sheet to the front of that before you hand it in. Good question. I know that's confusing. Can we also use Cite This for me? Yeah, 100%. So, Word is not the only system that will do this putting in citations for you. You can also use EndNote, which the uni supports, which is really, really good, and it is a better system than Word system. It just takes longer to learn. You can also use Mendeley, which is also fantastic. I think particularly for people who are in LaTeX, Mendeley is supposed to be really, really good. Or you can use Cite This for me. There are other systems other than the inbuilt Word one. Use whatever you want. I don't care. I don't care. The reason I point Word out to people is it's the easiest, lowest barrier to entry for a first report where you've got other shit to worry about. So that's why I encourage Word. But use any other system you know. Go for it. When quoting directly, for example, quoting the task asked by the client, do I use quotation marks followed by a reference? Yeah, that's perfectly fine. You shouldn't be quoting often, but occasionally, and your situation here, yes, you might want to directly quote. Yeah, quotation marks followed by a reference is perfect. I see we have some random in the chat. Hi, Icy. Hope you're enjoying learning some random um, engineering communication skills. Do we print in color? Yes. If you've used color, print in color. Oh, and I should have mentioned this with headings. Don't make them colorful. Don't go in and use any of this blue or anything like that. Just leave them black. It's a thing academics don't tend to do headings in color, so make them be black. Do we reference the project description? Yeah, I would. How do we reference an image? Depends where you got it from. You reference the place you got it from. Yeah, maybe I might have time for a meeting today. I'm not sure. All right, I'm gonna quickly jump back into here and see what I have forgotten to go through so far. So we've gone through a lot of referencing. I'm glad I put this in here because there was loads of questions. That's awesome. Pictures, we've talked about. Your own versus other people. Yep, we talked about that. Styles, heading and emphasis, we've talked about that. Awesome. Table of contents, not required in something as short as an 8-page document. We'll spec them later in semester, but you don't need them here. Okay, they're not helpful to you. Oh, can I use I? So I've been asked this question quite a few times already. What's the go with personal pronouns? And you wanna stop using them. It's not the end of the world in this report whether you use a couple of personal pronouns, but you want to start to try and not do that, okay? Basically, the rule is a fact, and it's independent of who it happened to. So it shouldn't matter whether it was you that it happened to, it would have happened regardless, so you should never need to say I in that case. You start to use terms like in the project this happened rather than when I did this, this happened. It's in the project this happens. So you're not going to get murdered for using an I somewhere in this report. It's fine, but it's good practice to stop doing that. Don't do it deliberately. And if you've got some stuff, particularly on Sunday, where you've written something with first person and you don't know how to take the eyes out of it, share it and I'll go through it and I'll reformat it for you. It's generally flipping sentences around, which allows you to take the personal bias out of your writing. Yeah, anything Word puts in the slide. Oh, okay, sorry. The reference list looks like a light blue by default. Do we change it to black as well? Yes. Anything that Word puts in as a light blue, and that's if that's headings, if that's figure captions, or if it's referencing, just make it all black. Can we print color from the uni printers? Yes. Some of them. I think most of them now will print color. What about we or our? Again, you want to start to not use that. It's the project. You can use it. It does happen, and it's not necessarily wrong no matter what. And you will read journal articles with an I, a we, and an us, and a whatever in them. It's just incredibly rare. So start trying not to use it, and then you can use it when you need to for emphasis. Can you use the team found that? Yeah, that would be fine. It might even be better to say it was found that, or it was found. Well, if any team would have found that if they were in your same position, then it doesn't matter that it was the team. It can simply be it was found that. But yes, the team found that is good. I like it. In the project, we did this. Again, that can generally be rephrased as this was done. Where do we find the UN cover sheet? You Google it, all right? So I deliberately don't put it on my blackboard because one of my learning objectives is for you to learn how to go UN cover sheet and find it. It's not super tricky, but I want you to be able to do that. Should there be a majority focus on our competency task over our final project besides everything we've learned in the workshops? Priorities go workshop. Well, priority goes target audience, workshop, competency, overall project. Don't stress too much about present and past tense. Just try to be in one of them all the time. Okay, if you want to put in a welcome to your new team member, and somebody asked me this explicitly, but I've had this conversation a few times, you can put in a line or two on that. That's perfectly fine. So if you want to have your first sentence, maybe your first two sentences being a hi, welcome, we're team 6 of blah, 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 the greatest team of all time. We're doing this course and it's really great and this document's going to bring you up to speed on it. And you do that in 2 sentences at the start. Go for it. Amazing. So that's perfectly fine, but contain it within 1 or 2 sentences at the start, and then just get into the technical stuff from there. Okay, the technical stuff again shouldn't have a personal connotation to it. That's the wrong way to write technical content. So, by all means, nice personal, warm and fuzzy intro. Bang, got it. Get it out of the way. Jump into your technical stuff from there. Don't feel that you need to spend your entire document talking to the reader. The rest of your document should be technical statements of fact. All right, since our report is individual, how do you recommend we collaborate considering that each person in the group, I took this directly from Discord because I thought it was well phrased. How do you recommend that we collaborate considering that each person in the group would have taken the project home to work on it individually? So some teams have coalesced and everybody's working together, and some teams are working 4 people independently and then they're coming together in their workshop. In this scenario, you do your best to represent the teams, okay? So if somebody has gone off on their own and they've done some study and they haven't shared it with you, then you don't really know about it, then you don't talk about it. That's okay. You just present as though you are representing the team and you present everything you know from that perspective. And it may not be everything. And your other team member may present this in a slightly different light. And that's okay. That's okay from our perspective. You want to be super aware of that, though. You want to make sure that everybody in your team is all on the same page. So you probably should be having more team meetings if you're worried about this. But in your report, just present to the best of your ability. Present to the best of your ability. If you want to share some information, so if people have been thinking about this independently and they want to share information between them, their teams, you need to do this on the Discord, okay? And if you're a little bit worried, if a team member's asking you for your opinion or what did you put in your scope problem statement, because this is supposed to be the team scope problem statement, please share it through Discord and please at me into your conversation if you're worried about plagiarism. Because if you share your scope problem statement and that your other team member writes something that looks identical, I'm going to be asking questions about plagiarism. If you at me in it and say, hey Dylan, we had this conversation or whatever, or this person has requested this information from me, here it is, it's all above board. If you're worried about it being plagiarism, just make sure you include me, and that way I can say, yes, I approve you sending them this particular information, okay? Remember, it is an individual task. I'm not expecting you to all sit together to write this document. If you do that, you are going to have trouble plagiarism-wise. If you just take your team meetings or the information you've learned from that, go away and write this by yourself, you'll be perfectly fine. You'll have absolutely nothing to worry about. But if you are worried, please at me, and please have all your communication running through Discord, because that way it's above board. If I get 2 assignments and they look the same, and I say, why do these look the same? And I go, oh, I sent this to this person through a private Facebook chat, that straight away looks shady and under the table dealing, right? And that's going to be bad plagiarism-wise. If it's, hey, it was all up on our Discord, we clearly had a team meeting, and these were the outcomes of the team meeting, and that was really easy to see, you're going to be golden. You're not going to have to worry about anything. I hope this doesn't feel too much like an English class. Can I use something along the lines of, if you do X, then Y happens, or doing X allows you to do Y? Yeah, either of them would be fine in this report. Both of them are very talking to the reader, but don't stress about it. It's fine. This report is not about getting hung up on that type of stuff. It's about how can you translate what you've learned into useful information for your reader. Don't stress about it. You're doing great. Is it okay to share photos due to time constraints not allowing us to take photos for every part of our competency? It is, but really try to avoid it. Try and take all of your own photos, because as soon as you start sharing photos, the plagiarism questions start to come up, okay? So if your workshop leader has said, yes, nominate one photographer, I'm okay with that, that's fine. But if they haven't said that, everybody should be trying to take their own photos wherever they possibly can. I do understand that they can't, and it's fine. Again, share that photo through Discord. Make sure that we know that that was what was happening, and you'll be golden. For our competency, are we expected to have thought of a solution to our problem? No, definitely not, Abby. Definitely not. No, you're going to get a self-contained 1.5 hour hit of stuff to do. You don't need any real prep before that, and it doesn't need anything about your final project to be thought about. You'll be fine. Okay, this is a great question from Jamie. What if your report manages to be compact and still have good amounts of information and is only 7 pages? Would you still be able to achieve all the marks? Yes, 100% yes. If you manage to get it all in and it happens to only take 7 pages because you've done an unbelievably good job of writing concisely, yep, totally giving you all the marks. Okay, you have the space, and so you could easily fill it, I'm sure, with some additional information at the end or something like that to make it even more useful to your reader. But you don't have to fill the pages to get the marks. The ENGG1500 title page asks how long the assessment took. How long should it take? So this is predominantly a personal reflection for you. Some people have working methodologies where they smash through content super quickly. Some people have working methodologies where they chip away at stuff really, really slowly and they spend many, many hours at a low intensity. That's fine. I don't know. I don't care. It's for your own personal reflection to be able to look at it and go, this is a body of work that took me this long to produce. If I move forward to another assignment like this in the future, how do I need to budget my time in order to be successful? So it's all about how long it takes you. I don't know. I don't care. The only reason it's on there is to force you to write it down. Which photos should I take from my competency? The final product, the process, all of them. I'd definitely be taking the final product. And if there's any key moments in the process that you want to capture, great, capture it. If you've realized that, oh, I should have taken these photos last week, damn it, that's fine. It's okay. I expect you to have missed some photo taking opportunities. Remember that for your actual project, though, that, hey, guys, we should remember when we start our real project to take some photos right at the beginning, and at the end of every session, take some photos of where we're up to or whatever. They would all be really good habits to get into. Definitely take them of your final product, but if you remember to take some in between, that could be great as well. Yeah, so Bo, this is going to go for everybody in 126. How do you do photos in the workshop? I'm going to be okay with you whipping out your phone and taking a photo, but I just want your team to probably not be actively swinging hammers and stuff like that at the time. But, having your phone out, take photo, put it away, I'm okay with that. Leaving your phone on the bench whilst people are working, I'm less okay with that. Talk to your workshop leader. We should be okay. Are the photos of things we're doing in our competency? I assume that's what most people are talking about photo-wise. Maybe there's other things as well. Also with the title page, that doesn't count towards the page count. Correct. The title page does not count. Yeah. 9 pages, not including the title page, not including the cover page, not including references. Do we need the title page with the hard copy? Yes. So for the hard copy, take what you did as a soft copy and then just hit print. Okay, give me exactly that as a printed copy and then staple the cover sheet to the front of it. I'm gonna listen to every lecture. Good, cool. Yeah, you get pure content pure content every Saturday, and then we do live sessions Tuesday morning. Anyone who wants to learn, cool. Is there an ENGG1500 title page that's already created? Yeah, 100%. It's in with your assessments. If you go into Blackboard and you come to the assessments tab, the first thing here is there's the video, and then there's the ENGG1500 title page just there. And then there's obviously your discipline specific stuff. And I'll set all of them out in the same way for you. I know it's a lot first up, but it gets super easy. Is there a specific way you want us to format things like page numbers and footnotes? No, I wouldn't be using footnotes very much if I was you. Again, you don't need them for your references, but you can. I don't have an issue with you using footnotes if you know how to use them correctly. I don't mind how you do your page numbers and stuff. We might get more specific on some of that stuff in later reports, but I don't want you to stress. If you want to put page numbers in, and by the way, I'd encourage everybody to put page numbers in. I'll do it the easy way. You can just double click down here and you can just bang some page number bottom of page, right-hand side. That's it. That's all you need to do, and then you've got page numbers. We'll worry about correct formatting and making them Roman numerals and all that kind of jazz later. Don't stress about them now. Good question though. Really good question. Rabbit time soon. I'm still answering questions as fast as I can. Would you prefer stapled or binded, seeing as binded is more professional? You're correct. So at this stage, do I have any binded reports kicking around? I normally have some on my floor that I've been marking. I don't. Look, stapled is fine. Until you get to the point where you can no longer put a staple through it, I'm happy for you to do stapled. Your final report, I will ask for it to be bound, just to get you some of that experience. But this one, stapled, all due. Do we have to put our own photos in the reference list? Nope. If you took the photo, you don't need to reference it. It's yours. You own it. You're all good. I'm not upselling. That's not my job. I'm just here to teach awesome engineering, okay? I'm not a salesperson. If we're doing the robot, can we include small snippets of code that shows how to initialize sensors? Yeah, you can. So both for any of the coding projects, so medical or robot, a small snippet of code is fine. Particularly if it's really informative and if something needs to be code for it to make sense, perfectly happy for you to do that. But keep it really small and have a deliberate reason why you want to include it. Otherwise, pseudocode that stuff. Assessment 2 is due next week during the workshop. Assessment 2 is officially due Monday, 5 p.m. as a soft copy to Blackboard. And then print that and hand it in at the start of your workshop as well. You need to do both. Is there a difference between the title page you Googled and the other title page? Yeah, so I didn't Google a title page, I Googled a cover page. I'm sorry that this distinction is subtle, but it's there. When you Google it, what you're going to get is a UON cover sheet, and I try and use this terminology, assessment item cover sheet. It's this thing. But the title page is this thing, okay? It's very different, very different. When we upload our soft copy, is that done through email or Blackboard? Blackboard. You want to click on here, and it will allow you to upload a copy then. Make sure your file name is correct, please. One is UN title page, Google that one. The other is specific for this course. 100%, thank you, Avi. Does the soft copy need to include the title page? Yes. Not the cover page, but it does need to include the title page. Do we reference a photo in the caption or reference list or both? So you always reference, this is a good question, you always reference in text and then the reference list appears. The reference list at the end is a summary of all of the in-text references in your document. That's my thing. So what we would do if we wanted to reference this, we would right click, we would insert caption, and we would go some great trebs, whatever, and I can insert I can go to references, insert citation, and put it in there, and it can go into the figure caption, okay? And then it will, again, automatically appear on your reference list when you update citations and bibliography, okay? So you put it in here, and these references make up this reference list automatically. Wait, do you want the page numbers Roman numerals? No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We'll do that later. Don't stress. It's not worth the brain cells. I would prefer, my preference for where the staple goes is at a 45-degree angle. So as I flick them across, they don't tear out through the staple. Yes, I have a preferred way I like the staple to go. When you mark 700 reports, you have a preferred way you like everything to go. Do we include a copy of the university cover page in the soft copy? No, you don't need to. And it's super annoying to do. Don't worry about it. You only need it for the hard copy. Thanks, Jamie. If your workshop is on Thursday, you hand the hard copy in then, yes, correct. Soft copy on Monday for everybody at 5 o'clock, regardless of when your workshop is. That makes it fair. And then hand in your hard copy in your workshop. That makes it reasonable. Technical questions about Strand 7, prep them and ask them in your workshop. So we place the title page onto the first page of our document. Yep. Should we include our student number on all the pages in the header and the footer? You can. I don't need you to. I like that as an idea because if you lose a page somewhere, it's a little bit easier for me to know where it goes and who you are. But if you don't know how to do that, don't stress too much about it for this report. Again, we will cover those kind of more difficult in-depth stuff later. With the UN cover page, do we fill it out in the PDF or print it out? Wherever you possibly can, fill out forms online and print them. Sometimes you'll still need to sign them and things by hand, but it is so much easier for me to not have to read scrawled handwriting. And that's going to make me way happier when I'm marking. So try wherever you can to type them wherever possible. However, that being said, something that might be a really good idea for you all to do is get this page, print like 10 of them, and chuck them in your bag. Because if you forget, and you just need to whip one out 2 minutes before an assignment is due and fill it out really quickly by hand, cool, that might get you out of trouble. I printed like 50 of these in my second year because of how often I forgot I needed them, and I just jammed them all in my bag, and then I didn't need them for like 3 years. I think I actually finished with a couple left, but I'm so glad I did that. Line spacing. Oh, super important. You have been asked for double line spacing. Yes, thank you for asking this question. It was one of my things that I wrote down to not forget and then totally forgot. So, you've got your text, right? What I want you to do, you've been asked for double line spacing. What you do is you go paragraph. So come up here. Come up to paragraph and you hit this little option here. And you get these paragraph settings and it gives you like indents and all sorts of stuff. But the important one we're looking for here is spacing. It'll be set to multiple. You need to go to double. Okay. And it will spread everything out. Now the reason why this is good is for me as a marker, I can then make notes and things within your line spacing. So most things that you submit for review will have double line spacing. I hate marking anything that is not. And yes, it blows your document length out quite drastically, but you need to do this, okay? When you go from paragraph to paragraph, it can be a little bit subtle. For some reason I'm yelling at the screen because I've got my caps lock on. It can be a little bit subtle as to when there's a paragraph break. So a tab to start your paragraphs is really nice when you're using double line spacing, okay? It is covered in the Word 101 video. If you want a recap of that, or if people want me to go through it again, I'm happy to go through it again. Can I give examples of a typical insert project here and then explain how my design will differ? Yeah, that could be a great way to do it. Here from my research are some typical ways in which this would happen, and here is how maybe our situation is a little bit different from that, is a really great way to pull a new reader in. Give them something they already know and can relate to, and then talk about how yours might be different. That's potentially a very good way to lay this out. Double line spacing, default margins. Yeah, so if you want to change your margins, layout, margin, and then you can go narrow, for example, and it'll squeeze everything up, or wide and it'll squash everything down. Leave them the way they were. Leave them on normal, all right? We will talk about margins in a future report. You don't need to touch them now. Is the cover page required for the hard copy? Yes. And is the title page required for the soft copy? Yes. The title page is required for both. The cover page is required for the hard copy. We don't put a page number in the title page. Oh, look, don't worry about it. You're correct. You should put a section break in and you shouldn't number your title page and all that kind of jazz. Don't worry about it for this report. Spend the brain cells on actually thinking about the content. Don't waste them on where your page numbers go. We'll do page numbers in the future. You're all good. Should we fill out the UN cover page in the PDF or by hand? In the PDF, wherever you possibly can. So do we reference every picture we put in from Google Images? Yep. Yep. No, that's fine. Your reference list might blow out and be 10, 15, 20 things long. Oh, I will say this. Your reference list doesn't need to be double spaced. I don't care. You can shrink your reference list down to be something more reasonable. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't count in your page count anyway, so who cares? Are boundaries and constraints the same? Maybe. Depends. Probably. Probably. Um, Sometimes you'll artificially put in a constraint slightly within a boundary for safety factors and stuff like that. But generally, yes, they're similar. Is this for all reports such as surveying? What I'm telling you is for this assessment in ENGG1500. All of your other classes will tell you to do different things. And in fact, when we used to, back in the day, we had more reports in ENGG1500, and they very deliberately had different structures to expose you to the fact that there is not one way to write reports. There are hundreds of ways to write reports, and the skill for an engineer is to be adaptable, not to memorize a single style. So what I'm telling you applies to this report, not to generic things. If somebody in surveying asks you for something different, then do something different. How do you change the spacing between words to have each line flush? Great question. It's called justifying your text. Home. So by default, you'll be left justified. You could be centered. You could be right justified. You want this one, which is just justified. And it will automatically change the spacing between your words such that you line up really nicely on the left and the right hand sides of the page. This is how you should present pretty much all your work forevermore. I'll turn the cues off. I forget people don't like cues. So that button there is the button you want. Yes, make your first page of your assessment your ENGG1500 title page. Cool. Am I actually caught up on questions? I'm so glad that I set aside all of this time to do this. I was real worried because not that many people put questions in the Discord, and I was like, oh, maybe they don't actually have any questions. But no, we did. Is there anything I haven't covered yet? No, you don't need to reference the title page, Hunter. Good question. All right, I'll be back in a second. If you have any questions about the actual course, please put it in the chat. Oh, thank you. Sorry, I just realized I had no audio. I'll answer your question again. Ah, sorry. Um, what level of physics understanding is the question I was answering. You can assume your workshop leader. Sorry, you can assume the student is basically another ENGG1500 student. So they didn't require physics to come in. They're not necessarily doing physics. Most degrees don't. Anything that you've learned in math so far in the first 3 weeks, yeah, you can definitely include that. Um, but just because you knew something from high school physics doesn't mean it's, derivatives and integrals, probably not. Just give them a quick recap. Yes, thank you. Flick your mic down. You guys are the best. I did mute myself so I could talk to my bunnies, yes. And then I forgot to unmute myself. Hold on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can I assume the person knows what a function return is? Have you covered that in 1003? Because if you've covered it in 1003, you can assume it. If you haven't, then you can't. This is how you get viewers to your YouTube channel. Oh, you want to swap shoulders, Grace? Yeah. Okay. There you go, Grace. Come on. Yeah, you can go around. Come on, Bubba. Um, you don't do 1003. Are you a software student then? If you don't do 1003, you can assume that they're taking your other subjects. Okay, so if you've learned any specific information in your other subjects, you can assume that the the audience knows that as well. All right, but if you know it specifically, or you know it because you learnt it in 1500, then you've got to cover it. This is Grace. She's just 3. Cool. Yeah, I'll check emails and Discord and stuff after the stream. This is not the one who ate the wood. The one who ate the wood is Art, and Art's a little bit less patient than Grace. So Art won't sit for quite as long without trying to get free. So I know everyone can use their own structure, but can you please tell me the important parts of what we should include? The most important stuff for you to cover is your workshops, followed by your problem definition, followed by your competency. Not necessarily in that order in your report, but they're the most important things to cover. What would be the assumptions for medical engineering? So you've got assumptions in medical coming from a few different directions. Some of them around the human body as a thing. And there's all sorts of assumptions around, okay, if I get this ECG signal, it means the heart is doing these things. Well, that's based on a model, which is based on a set of assumptions, right? So there's a bunch of them there. There's also a bunch of assumptions around how the sensors themselves work and what are they actually picking up. So an ECG picks up an electrical pulse. It reads a voltage. It doesn't actually read the heart. You're making a bunch of assumptions about that, and this will be more obvious after your workshop, where you'll see that the actual sensor itself picks up more than just the heart. It picks up things like other muscles and stuff working as well, and that can corrupt your data. Yes, you're making assumptions about your patient as well. There is that they are alive, yes, but that they have a heart that works the way that you're assuming a heart does. And it doesn't point the wrong way in their chest or something like that, which messes with an ECG signal. Is the problem definition what we need to do for our final project? Yep. Yep. Do we talk about these assumptions if we haven't discussed them yet? Yep. Yep. Talk about what you can. So go back to your problem definition, go back to what you've been learning in your workshops, look for anything that you can pick out as an assumption and pick it apart. Some projects there's lots of this, and some projects there's not very much of this yet. For some people, and to some extent medical, for example, it's a little bit early to really do models and assumptions with you. That makes more sense in about week 6 or 7. But, we've got to do it at some time, and we just picked a time. Yeah, look, you can do problem definition and assumptions together, or you can separate them out. It's really project and author dependent and how you've decided to structure it. But Abby, you're Enviro, right? You've done some testing with things like you've done some physical testing. And if you remember the video that I made for that week, we talked about how testing is creating assumptions based on where you sample and when you sample and all that type of stuff. They're all assumptions that you're making. So you can try and think about them and try and extrapolate some of that to your project about where some of those assumptions might be. Is there anything else that I can help? Oh, Grace. Grace is getting impatient. She just nipped me. I'm gonna let it go. Are you medical? Sorry. Yeah, okay. You've done some of it then, but not a huge amount of it. But watch the video. It should help. And we'll be in your workshop and we'll talk about it in your workshop on Friday. Cool. Is there anything else that we need to cover today? Is there anything else I can help anybody with in our last couple of minutes here? Or is everybody happy that they got to see a bunny? How's our stream doing? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you can break into that. The ideal heartbeat thing, that's a huge assumption. Um, but you've also been learning, week to week about all of these sensors and all the different hardware and stuff, and a lot of that's a lot harder than it maybe first seems, right? And there's a whole bunch of assumptions and models there. Um, I don't know if I have a favorite Star Wars character. Probably Obi-Wan in the prequels. Who is the author of the workshop PowerPoints for Aero? They should say. I thought they said. If they don't, Sean Nay, your workshop leader. Check real quick. Course material, aerospace, week 1 notes. Oh, maybe they don't say. All right, Sean Nay is the author. Glad you liked it. So the competency task is to be included in the report. Yes. Nothing else from week 4, just the competency. Yes, hello there. Hey, there's a bunny emote. I did not know that. If you're struggling with any of the writing and stuff like that, my main thing to you is, have you started? Do you have a 20-page document that you've written everything into? Because I can't help you if you haven't started, okay? So it is really confusing, and it's really impossible to plan 100% of this out from start to finish before you've started. You just need to start, you need to make some progress, and then we can work with that. But if you try and plan absolutely everything, it's impossibly difficult. So I'm happy to help people, but please start, get as much down as you can, and then I can help way more efficiently. So I have to model the trusts using Strand, answer discipline-specific requirements in the report. Yep. Don't worry about personal language. If that's your biggest problem in this report, stop wasting brain cells on it. Get everything else sorted first. Don't stress about the personal language. It's fine. It's a skill. You'll develop it over time. And you've got 6 days to finish that. Getting rid of personal language is a thing you can do right at the end. Do everything else first. Don't stress about your personal language. You'll be fine. When we'll be able to use Strand to model your truss? As of week 1, you could have started using Strand. You had the links to all the YouTube videos that you needed to be able to do everything for Strand. That's been on you since week 1. So jump in, go into a computer lab, boot up Strand, start modeling. You've had everything you've needed. Do we need an abstract? No, you don't. An abstract doesn't make any sense in this type of report. Last 2 brain cells? Hey, if you've still got 2 brain cells kicking around by this stage, you're doing well. No, but it's all about prioritizing, okay? It's about, there is, the reason why we stage out how we teach you communication skills is it's an enormously complicated thing. And a bunch of the questions that we were getting asked today around really specific things, like removing personal language, is really hard. Trying to get stuff sorted like page numbers and Roman numerals and all that kind of stuff, really hard. So we don't worry about it now. We worry about that later. We're going to talk about that in week 6, and we're going to sort it out then. For now, we just got to get some content down. What uni computers have Strand on them? All the ones in engineering should have it. And if you look at I think it's the first video that I on the YouTube, it will show you how to map it from any uni computer that doesn't have it. And you should be okay from there. You're down to your very last brain cell? Yeah, I know the feeling. As we got most of our knowledge from the lectures and from the workshops, what, I'm assuming, kind of other information could we include from outside? Whatever you needed. So if you didn't need to do a huge amount of external research, then you may not have a huge amount of external stuff to put in there. But if your workshop notes had, hey, you should go and look this up and learn about it, and you did so, great. Or if you found the workshop notes lacking in some aspects and you went and found a better resource externally, great. Is the scope problem statement for the final project or the competency? For the final project, not for the competency. For the final project is what your scope problem statement is. Can I access the ES computer labs outside of working hours? You can access them whenever they're open, and I think they're open sort of 7:30 and 8 a.m. in the morning through to about 10 p.m. at night. Do we need a methodology? Nope. Doesn't make any sense in this case to have a methodology. This is why I don't recommend trying to follow the standard engineering report that goes abstract, introduction, methodology, result. Like, none of that makes any sense in this context, right? So you've obviously heard some standard engineering terms before. Ignore them. They are not helping you. You don't need abstracts. You don't need methodologies. Don't lock yourself into that way of thinking, and you'll find that this is actually heaps easier. If you found that your workshops covered all the content, then you found your workshops covered all the content. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they definitely don't do things like explain how your sensors work, and I'd probably be looking into them, but it is 3 minutes to 10. I do have to close this off in a second. I'm happy to do any last minute things now, but I am going to close this off in a second. So if you've been waiting on a question, please chuck it in the chat now. I'll do a final round of questions, and then I'll end it because I've got to get in because I've got classes that will need me to be present in them. Yep, whether you had knowledge or not of your project is totally irrelevant. This isn't about what you know, it's about what a new person needs to know. So if a new person doesn't have previous knowledge, you need to explain it to them, okay? So the really, really hard thing to do is take yourself out of your own shoes and put yourself into the shoes of another person, and that's the learning objective here. So it's not what did you know, it's what does somebody new need to know. And if they needed your previous knowledge, then share that with them. If they needed the workshops, share that with them. If they needed external info, share that with them. Whatever the new person needs. It is really hard, I fully acknowledge that, and that's the learning objective here. Awesome, glad I could help. Assuming the new group member has seen the lectures, do we need to only focus in the workshops and what we learned in them? Pretty much, yep. Thanks, Hamish. Thanks, everybody. Thank you again, as always, for being super engaged in the live stream. These things live and die based on your level of engagement. And again, we filled 2 hours of awesome content. I hope it was useful to you. It certainly felt like a valuable use of my time. So thank you very much for being an engaged cohort. Really, really helps. I'll see as many of you in your workshop this week as I can possibly get to. I will check those emails and whatnot as I leave here. And hopefully, if you have any further questions, you'll be able to grab me in your workshop this week. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been awesome. I'll let Grace know you liked it. Awesome. See everyone. See you all next week. Thank you.